Mayhem, mental health, and masturbation. A look inside of HBO series idol. Hey everybody, my name is Tammy. I'm a licensed mental health therapist. I specialize in trauma, sex, and relationship therapy. I'm going to talk about some sexual themes in the current controversial show Idol, which is streaming on HBO, and I think new episodes come out on Sunday. At the point of this recording, there's only been one episode, so I am brand new to the show. But did you know Lily-Rose Depp plays a character known as Jocelyn on the show? And fun fact, Lily is Johnny Depp's daughter. And I hope this isn't a spoiler alert, but she uses a lot of eyeliner too, just like Johnny Depp does in some of his movies. Anyway, she is a young, attractive, rising pop star who starts a romance with the Los Angeles club owner named Abel the Weekend Tesfaye. That's his real name. And one of my favorite actors is in this show, Dan Levy. Oh my God, David. If you know, you know. Anyway, episode 1 starts off with Jocelyn posing in front of the cameras, and as soon as the cameras pan out, we see some boobage. We see some major boobage. But we also see Jocelyn softly crying after a photographer asks her to show some vulnerability. All right, I'm seeing some boobage. I'm seeing some crying. I am hooked in. I am totally here for it. I am intrigued. Soon after that, someone suggests in the photo shoot that Jocelyn's wearing a hospital bracelet, and they suggest that she is romanticizing mental health, suggesting that mental health is sexy. Have you guys ever thought that mental health is sexy? I have never thought about that. So when I have somebody coming into a therapy session, I have hunches and I have gut feelings of where I'm going to go with this person as I'm talking to them, as they're telling me their story, as they're disclosing their truth. But it might take me 1, 2, or 3 sessions to actually get a full handle of what I'm working with. So in this case, I'm going to be assessing Jocelyn as she's coming into a therapy session based upon the information I see in episode 1. Let me know in the comments if you disagree or if you agree with my findings or my suggestions. In my opinion, the theme of the first episode of this show drips with sexuality, sensuality, and a possible drum roll, please, compulsive sexual behavior disorder or sex addiction. Again, I don't know yet. It's episode 1. I don't know anything about this girl other than what you know when you see in the first episode. But let's take a look at compulsive sexual behavior disorder. Compulsive sexual behavior disorder is characterized by ongoing and repetitive sexual impulses or urges that are uncontrollable. My dogs are playing in the background. I am so sorry. The repetitive sexual behavior along with sexual activities becomes a spotlight in their life. On the outside looking in, it can look like a train wreck. It can look like the individual is sabotaging themselves. They might be sabotaging them to the point of neglecting their own health. They're putting their life at risk, and they're just neglecting their personal care. They often try to control their sexual activities, but they can't. They are unsuccessful. These types of efforts to control or reduce their repetitive sexual behavior has adverse consequences. The individual with compulsive sexual behavior disorder experiences increased tension before the sexual activity, but then after the sexual activity, they feel relief. Well, that's normal, right? Except only to repeat the negative or bad or red flag behavior over and over and over again. It's compulsive. So attributes of compulsive sexual behavioral disorder can include the following. 1, compulsive masturbation. 2, compulsively paying for sex partners. 3, excessive pornography use. 4, excessive sex urges that take up some time in the brain. You're thinking about it a lot, right? 5, they may use sex as a way to escape from their problems. 6, the complex emotions that comes after the sex acts as a way to cope, as a way to deal with stress or anxiety or abandonment or low self-esteem. It's a way to avoid feeling any of the feels, right? The next one is those with compulsive sexual behaviors. They continue to have risky, compulsive sex acts in spite of causing serious personal problems. Compulsive sexual behaviors, I say it slow because it's hard to say, words are hard, include trouble keeping stable relationships. Another example could be, it could appear as a cover. It could be like a smoke screen. So their sexual behaviors or tendencies or cycles can be covering up some other emotions. And we talked about that, but one I didn't mention is fears, abandonment. And I think she probably has some abandonment, but I don't know yet. I'm just guessing. People with compulsive sexual behaviors often have short-lived romances. They hook up, they have one-night stands. They don't have realistic long-term relationships, and they're not very healthy. So do any of those things I just mentioned apply to Jocelyn? What do you think? Do you think Jocelyn's sexual behaviors is compulsive? Do you think it's impulsive? Let me know in the comments below. So let's talk about sex addiction. According to WebMD, sex addiction is defined as lack of control over sexual urges, thoughts, and impulses. How I see it, basically sex addiction only refers to things that are in excess, things that are extra, behaviors that severely impact the person's life, but in a negative way. Some attributes of behaviors of someone who might have a sex addiction can include any of the following. So you're going to see some resemblance of the list that I just rattled off before. 1, reckless and impulsive sexual behavior. 2, lack of control over your sexual urges. 3, excessive masturbating or excessive sexual fantasies kind of playing out in your head. 4, exhibitionism or voyeurism. 5, multiple sex partners. Now, before we all start pointing fingers at people who we know and diagnosing them, I want you to know that those are just examples. It takes a lot more to get diagnosed with that. It takes a lot more sitting with the client and kind of dissecting their life. And we have not had enough information to do that, to officially diagnose. But that is some information to start your thinking. So borderline sex addiction is when they can't control their urges and when it causes harm within their relationships and it affects their lives as well as others in a negative way. So if Jocelyn were to come into my office, I'd say, hey girl, hey, but I would ask her some specific questions to come up with an idea of how I'm going to treat her or how I'm going to diagnose her. In order to get a bill paid in therapy, you're going to have a diagnosis, unfortunately, unless if you're private pay, but I'm not going to get into that. So questions can go something like this, and let me know if you have some questions that you think I should have asked Jocelyn, where did that come from? Oh my gosh. I would say, hey, do you have any sexual habits that just constantly consume you? Do you think about them all the time? Do you have sexual habits that seem to be impulsive? Do you have pressure to engage in particular sexual practices? And does that specific experience give you release afterwards? I would ask her to give me some examples or just have a conversation about that. So one thing for sure I'm looking for is, how do you feel after the act is done? Jocelyn, do you feel sad? Do you feel empty? Do you feel a void? Let's talk about that. Jocelyn, do you try to curb your sexual fantasies or do you act out on them? Do you have impulses that you try to control or do you act out on them? In a therapy session, I'd be asking her a more open-ended question, but this gives you an idea of the types of questions that I would ask, and I would gather that information to get my own professional conception of how I'm going to treat her, like I said. I additionally might do a psychosocial exam, maybe figure out a few other assessments, assess her for depression or anxiety or things like that. I would personally be looking for trauma. But after she leaves the session, I would ask myself, is her actions compulsive sexual behavior? Is this type of stuff she doing medicating herself? Is she trying to avoid stress, loneliness, sadness, or anxiety, or abandonment, abuse? I'd ask myself, is she struggling to maintain healthy relationships? Can she maintain healthy relationships? Is she hurting herself or is she hurting others? I'd be asking myself that after she leaves with the information that she gave me. I'd be asking myself, is her sexual behaviors destructive? And if so, how? Hey, a big ask, if you're here for the first time, please let us know that you're here. Please let us know that you watched it for the first time. Maybe even let us know where you're watching it from. As you know, mental health is a big concern in the world right now. It seems to be at an all-time high. And Pauline and I on Therapy Talk, we try to take mental health content. We try to educate people so that way they don't feel so alone, or that way they feel like they're more educated about mental health. So going back to Jocelyn, do you think she has a sex addiction, or do you think she has compulsive sexual behaviors? Or is it both? It is married. It is tomato, tomato, potato, potato. But anyway, you might have your own hypothesis, and I would be super interested in that. So leave that in the comments below. Come back later as I'm going to assess Jocelyn further as I get more information from her. And please come back and watch out for Pauline's video, as she's going to take a different aspect of Jocelyn and talk about her mental health. Well, I want to thank you for stopping by. I want to thank you for sticking with me. I want to thank you for learning more about compulsive sexual behavior disorder. And I want to thank you for learning more about sex addicts. Anyway, I adore you. Thanks for coming by, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.